One. Welcome to the SoCal Real Estate Development and Syndication Podcast from Blueprints to Skylines, where we interview the go-getters in the industry. I'm your host, Peter Berkoff. Today's guest is Jaime Sanchez with Silverpeak Properties, real estate developer investor. Thanks for coming on, Jaime. How are you?
Doing really well. Appreciate it. You invited me to your podcast. Very excited to be here.
Thank you for coming on. I met at you at one of your development projects, and it was a great project, and I enjoyed being there. Tell me a little something about what you guys do at Silver Peak Properties.
Yeah, so we focus on multifamily projects exclusively here in the LA area. And so for us, it's really just finding those pockets where we could create significant value. And so when you came to that meetup, you realize that we invest in really strong submarkets within LA, and create these multifamily projects where we can fit as many units as we can to maximize the value of that piece of property and create a ton of opportunity for not just cash flow, but just market appreciation, given that we're here in the LA market.
Well, you spoke about maximizing. How do you how do you navigate that? Like who's the important people part of that? Finding how much square feet you can put on that piece of property.
Yeah, so when we evaluate opportunities, we first do kind of a back of the envelope analysis whenever present opportunities are presented to us. And so we use this philosophy called highest and best use. And so whenever someone presents us with the opportunity, a highest and best use always means how can we fit the highest density and the best type of project on this lot. And so when you came to our meetup at Victoria Park, effectively the zoning allowed for 2 units only, but given the ADU laws, we knew we can add a third ADU on the plans, and we'll be able to convert a fourth ADU once we get our certificate of occupancy. So that's how you maximize highest and best use philosophy. And what allows us to then take it to the next level is you got to hire the architect to be able to go ahead and put together the entire schematics of setbacks and separation between buildings and floor space and things like that to really determine what's your highest gross buildable area. But from just like an onset is just determining how many units you can build is the kind of the first step.
How important is the architect in finding out how much you can maximize out of a lot?
They are instrumental in the beginning phase of the project. And so that's one of the things we automatically, bring on board is the architect that's going to take on the project. And so we usually go through what's called a feasibility analysis to determine what's the best project that can be built on any given site. And then from there, if the feedback looks positive,
Yeah.
then we take it to the next level, right, which is schematic design, and then it goes into full-blown architectural sets. But they're probably the first consultant we bring on board. That's going to be a major key piece to the team.
What are the do's and don'ts in hiring an architect? Like how do you navigate that?
I'd say is their track record and experience in the specific type of projects you want to do, right? And so um, an architect that focuses on custom homes, right, single family homes, isn't going to be the best qualified architect for an apartment building, right? And so I think, and that goes for all your consultants, right? But the consultant that you bring on board, depending on the type of project you're looking to develop, needs to have experience and a track record in those specific type of projects. So, like I said, some of our projects are in this 4 to 6 unit range, multifamily. We're dealing with lot sizes of 7,500 square feet. The architect we employ for those our projects are different from the architects we employ for the larger commercial deals. It's just because there's a different skill set. It's not to say that they can't do it, but it's just their ability to understand and navigate the process is just way different.
Yeah. So how did you get into this? What was your first deal? Who kind of dragged you into this, or how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I kind of had a parallel path in my track record.
Uh-huh.
Uh, when I first started kind of my career, I started in construction management. So I was working on like more larger commercial projects as I was kind of going through the ranks of my corporate career. And that's kind of how I got exposed to construction and architects and then financing and just the different aspects of building these larger institutional type commercial projects. But I knew that that's not where wealth is built, right? That's just at the end of the day, it's still a job. But it was great experience for me to understand all the components of real estate development from a corporate point of view. I knew that I wanted to be a developer myself one day. And so you have to take the risk, you got to take the leap. And so started off with a flip was my first personal project, so to speak, that kicked off my personal track record, and it was a very involved flip. It wasn't just a cosmetic fix. It was very intense. I had to deal with historic board. We had to do with load bearing walls. We had to permit an addition. So it was a very involved flip, and that's kind of set the tone for building out my personal track record from a flip. Went off to building an ADU, doing garage conversions, doing split homes, doing ground up ADUs, focusing on the ground up small developments. And from there, it's been a snowball effect of kind of always leveling up the experience and the track record.
At Silver Peak, now that you're involved with that, what's your guys' buy box? What do you guys look for in land or property? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so now again, because our track record continues to improve,
Uh-huh.
we're only looking at lot sizes that are 7,000 square feet or larger. Ability to do high density, right? Build 10 plus units on it. So now we're no longer thinking kind of more townhome style or small multifamily style. We're now thinking apartment buildings. And so building a brand new apartment building on a lot, for us, that's our buy box now for the ground up space. We also have a multifamily arm, which is more existing assets. And so again, same thing there. Doesn't make sense to buy anything less than 10 units. And so for us, 10 plus units, existing apartment buildings where we can renovate the units and add ADUs. That's another good value add play we've started employing, which balances our portfolio now.
Yeah. What resources do you guys rely on, stay up to date, especially with codes, city council, laws, rental
Yeah.
laws? How do you guys stay up to date on
I
all that?
go, I go to a lot of networking events and I go to a lot of kind of what are more educational events that where these leaders, these people who are in the pulse of the economy, interest rates, banks, other developers, leading developers, um, asset managers. So I just attend a lot of events. I'm attending an event tomorrow. I'm attending an event next week. There's always an event in any given week in real estate where we're always getting a pulse on what other people are doing or how generally the market is doing. So a lot of forecast events, and that allows me to stay in the pulse of what's going on in the economy, but also what's going on in my local market to pivot as needed when it comes to financing, when it comes to maybe pausing the brakes on this type of project and take on these other type of projects. That's how I get kind of a better sense of what's going on in the market.
Well, what is going on in Southern California market and the LA market? What are you guys seeing out there?
I mean, for us, we're still seeing a huge backlog of limited supply being unavailable to meet the demand for rentals in the LA market. LA is becoming even more unaffordable from a basis of being a buy a property, and so people have to rely on renting, and so that's pushing rents, and that's pushing availability for rental units. And we're not talking about just your typical older style one bedroom, two bedrooms. Even those are very constrained. Is people like new stuff too. They like new product, and we can't deliver on the ability to supply new product to the city. as fast as demand requires it. And so we're seeing still great valuations for new development, for anything that's existing. And so for us in the LA market, and that's kind of why our investment thesis only focuses on pockets of LA where there's, it's insulated from a lot of economic factors that allows us to hit our performance. And so, and then generally also from just kind of economic wise, LA for us is still a big hub for a lot of industries. And so while you hear of layoffs in this sector or this sector, it's balanced out by other sectors that are still thriving and doing well, and where people are still getting paid pretty well. Um, and um, and that allows us to insulate ourselves for strong growth when it comes to rentals and sale comparables of multifamily buildings.
Yeah, you seem to be very successful in this. There's a lot of negativity about real estate in Southern California, with the rental laws, the business, not business friendly state. But it's good to see that you guys are turning a negative into a positive. And
Right,
yeah, that's great. I mean, you everywhere you drive around, you see development going on,
right.
and
Yeah.
but
I think that's one of the things that's, we see it as a competitive advantage is, yes, it is very difficult. It is very cumbersome. It is an uphill battle in getting your projects approved. You're dealing with very tenant friendly type of laws, right? And so you're you're up against the wall dealing with all these issues. But that's also how great opportunities are made, right? And so because it is so difficult, because it is so capital intensive, the ability to manage and go through those hurdles allows us to become better operators and provide greater returns for our investors. So, um, and I think one of the competitive advantages that we have compared to maybe other people that try and invest in the Southern California market or California in general is, you know, I grew up in LA, and so I know these streets extremely well. I know when you cross these markets or these avenues, things change. And so being able to have that hyper local knowledge allows us to have a competitive advantage in understanding how things are trending in the LA market.
do when investors come to you, do they is that a concern to them? Like, hey, LA's, the rentals, there's a lot of laws. Do they get a little nervous with that sort of stuff, or how do you ease that?
No, I think for us is a lot of our investors end up having to be local folks as well, people who grew up here. And so they understand the dynamics of what's going on in our market. And we tell them, right, everything that I kind of just mentioned, right? We, grew up in the city, our understanding the permit process and our team, right? Our architects, our contractors, they're all local. And then for them, that give them better confidence in our ability to execute, just knowing that we understand our market very well, as opposed to saying, hey, I found this deal in out of state. I'm going to build this team out there. I think that uh, has a greater cost for pause versus kind of the other way around.
Are you willing to share a failure that you learned from with all of us?
I
Anything?
mean, there's always lessons to be learned along the way, right? That first
Yeah,
flip, for example, I think we lost maybe a little bit of money on
yeah.
that deal when we exited. But I never see it as a loss or a failure, right? It was my
Stepping
first
stone.
deal, stepping stone. It was a tuition I had to pay to learn it firsthand. I don't think given all my corporate experience, right? Corporate experience, I went to school, I even got my MBA, I focused on real estate finance. None of that stuff can prepare you for doing it yourself. And
Yeah.
so, again, my first deal, even with all the education and all my corporate experience, still doesn't prepare you for the actual trenches. And so once you're in the trenches and you realize certain things you need to navigate firsthand, that's when you really understand this game. And then you go ahead and apply it for the next deal and only become better from every opportunity therefore.
Can you share the latest win and success story that's happened lately for you?
Yeah, I'd say probably latest win, not, I mean, fairly recent, right? We closed on a 24 unit apartment building a month ago. And so that's our biggest acquisition to date. We already renovated one of the units. We're going through the ADU plans. And I even told my capital partners, right? Even though it was one of the larger acquisitions for our team, it was probably the smoothest one I've done so far. And the reason being, and I wasn't even sweating it, that we'd have the capital, that we'd get the financing, that things would pull through. Like usually you're always like against the gun to see, make sure that you have everything ready and that you feel confident that you're buying a good deal. It always kind of hits you as like, man, is this a good deal or not? Or am I getting too over my head here? And I was like, no, it's just things become a lot easier once they become more familiar. And
Yeah.
so for me, I think that was a big win, is understanding that with experience comes greater confidence in your ability to go ahead and perform and execute. And so it was a big win. And at the same time, it was probably one of the easier transactions that I had to deal with.
Let's talk about partnerships. Real estate's a very big partnership industry. How do you have partners? How did you find them? How can others find partners? Just kind of go on to that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I have partners on all our deals, both on what's called the general partnership side, which is where the executive decision making happens and we have roles and responsibilities
Yeah.
to each project, right? And then we also bring in limited partners, which are basically just investors. They're passive. They bring in the capital, but they don't have any oversight on the execution of the day-to-day of the project, right? And so all my deals have general partners and limited partners. We're in it together to improve um, communities, but also be able to go ahead and provide a healthy return for everyone involved. And so how I found my general partners, it has to do with your circle, right? And so your inner circle of people that you have your instant influence with. So, it's all dependent on your networking. It could be people from school, could be people around you that are in the same circle and the same kind of all in the same trajectory of personal and professional development. And so that's how I found my first business partner for the first flip we did, right? Is we had known each other personally for years. We're in this trajectory of wanting to improve ourselves, wanting to get into real estate. And so that's kind of how initially those partnerships work. And then other general partners got involved in different projects depending on the size of it. And these people organically show up when you go to the networking events, when you see the same people over and over again, when you vet them by seeing other projects they're doing, the projects you're doing, and then there's a level of trust that you can establish that allows you to say, hey, for the next deal, why don't we partner up, right? And so that's kind of the organic way of building these partnerships, is putting yourself out there and displaying the skills and traits that each of you have to be able to go ahead and combine them and create opportunities for one another.
Are you guys involved in any syndications or LPs in any other deals? How does that work?
Yeah, so all our deals are syndication models, right? So all
Yeah.
our deals, because they're very capital intensive, we're raising on the low end, 900,000 per deal to as high as over 2 million. And so that amount of capital requires outside investment. And so our limited partners, our passive investors, that's where, again, your center of influence, networking, friends and family, people kind of see this trajectory of, oh, he started with a flip. Now he's doing these larger projects years later. They see that trajectory of your track record, which allows them to trust that they know that you know what you're doing. And so that's how we're able to go ahead and find these limited partners to be able to aggregate them together and tell them, hey, I have this unique opportunity. We need outside investment. Are you willing to invest? Here are the returns. This is the outcome. This is the timeline. And then be able to place that trust in you.
How and where is your guys' best source to partner up with LPs and limited partners? Where do you find them? Uh, how does that work?
Yeah, so it goes back to the same kind of way in which you find your general partners. It's your center of influence, going to the networking events, finding people who are kind of in the same space. Maybe they're some levels behind you, right? Maybe they're for example, a lot of our investors now that see our larger projects, they're in like the flip stage of their career, right? Where we used to be 7, 8 years ago, and they want to level up to, the apartment building space. And for them, they see that as unique opportunities. Well, I can learn from a guy and I can invest and get a return while at the same time, taking on personal development of understanding how these projects work by being a passive investor, right? And so that's why going to these events, putting yourself out there is very important because you just don't know where these passive investors are going to be, where they kind of look up to you and say, hey, I understand what you're doing. I want to get involved, but all I can bring is capital. And it's like, well, that's perfect because that's what we need.
Yeah. What about masterminds? Are you a part of any masterminds? Can we talk about that?
Yeah. I'm definitely always part of different masterminds as time permits. But I've always invested in my personal development and professional development. So there are several masterminds I've taken over the years that deal with apartment investing, um, with short-term rentals, with long-term rentals. So I've always been part of these different masterminds that allow me to also open my access to other potential avenues for people that are similar to me in which they're on a similar trajectory, or at the same time learn some frameworks that I didn't and know before that allows me to apply to my business. So highly recommended, just depending on where you're at in your professional growth.
Well, thank you so much, Jaime. How can listeners get a hold of you for any questions or investment opportunities?
Yeah, the best way to reach out to me is through social media. I'm on Instagram at the Jaime O Sanchez,
Mhm.
Jaime O Sanchez. That's where I try to push as much content out there that's um, very polished and talks a lot about the development space, multifamily. And so you'll be able to go ahead and get a lot of educational value from a lot of the content that I bring there. And also see the update I have on all the projects we're working on. And so it's a great avenue for me to showcase to our current investors and prospective investors of how our projects are moving along. But also it's very educational understanding the process of what it takes to be in this side of the real estate space.
Thank you for coming on, Jaime. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. Please stay tuned in next time.